Good morning. May I ask everyone to please take their seats? Good morning. May I please ask everyone to take their seats? Can you clip me in? Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, honored guests, a very warm welcome to the third edition of the CTBT Science Diplomacy Symposium. Now this year, we are bringing you a hybrid program brimming with events, activities, and insights. So we have planned for you a number of panel discussions, side events, deep dives into the work of CTBTO's technical divisions, visits to our facilities, and even an expert communication workshop on combating misinformation. So over the next 4 days, participants will be delving into the policy and science of nuclear test monitoring. But first, delighted to be here to open the symposium with this high-level session, which is called Science for Diplomacy, the Relevance of the CTBT in a Dynamic Global Context. And it's my pleasure to be the MC of this morning's event. My name is Sanam Chantier. I'm part of the public information team. I also have the absolute honor of working alongside some wonderful colleagues as part of several task forces that have been launched by our Executive Secretary, Dr. Robert Floyd. One on the ratification of non-Annex II states and the other NDCs for all, the initiative that you'll be hearing more about throughout the week. As always, this symposium is streamed on our YouTube channel, so I'd like to welcome our remote viewers. Also, I would like to ask everyone here and those watching us online to please use our hashtag SDS3. We'd love to see as much engagement as possible. Now, this event comes at an important time. At a time when the threat posed by nuclear testing and nuclear weapons is once again of major concern. This, as the international community remains somewhat divided over a choice between disarmament or an arms race. And so this morning we are honored to be joined by speakers and panelists who will be sharing their perspective on the CTBT, as I'm sure you'd all agree that a ban on nuclear testing is one of the most useful tools to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons. And it goes without saying that, yes, we do have a long way to go until this treaty enters into force, but so far we have managed to foster a powerful norm against nuclear testing, one that's supported by you, by the international community. And on that note, I'd like to welcome to the stage the Executive Secretary of the CTBTO, Dr. Robert Floyd, under whose leadership we have successfully welcomed not one, not two, not three, but 6 ratifications and counting. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, honored guests, please join me in welcoming Dr. Floyd to the stage.
Now that's a dynamic introduction. and quite an act to follow. But dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, partners, it's so good to welcome you here this morning. It's such a pleasure to be welcoming you to this third Science Diplomacy Symposium, or STS, as we like to call it. With nearly 60 ambassadors and over 262 participants from all corners of the globe, I'm certain that we're going to have a memorable week and an engaging time together. So please enjoy, learn, and get the most out of this experience. What makes the STS stand out is that the participants are a true mix of diplomats, policymakers, and technical experts. As many of you know, some of the best ideas come from the interaction, the exchange that happens between these fields. In fact, back in the 1990s, when the CTBT was being negotiated, the verification regime required for a treaty was considered to be almost unrealistically ambitious. It was like trying to put a man on the moon. Flash forward to today. We now have a system in place that far surpasses the early design criteria. In this instance, science delivered on diplomacy's vision, a vision of a verification system that would open the door to a CTBT. This continues to be true as we make great strides towards universalization and entry into force. On the technical side, we've now established 304 of the 337 monitoring facilities. Most recently, the certification of a seismic station at Peladu in the Russian Federation, nearly 6,000 kilometers east of Moscow in a truly remote location within Siberia, one of the coldest locations on the face of our planet. That was a huge engineering and diplomatic milestone. It is science that is fundamental to supporting the powerful international norm against nuclear testing, a valuable contribution, a valuable diplomatic outcome. The science in the international monitoring system and in the International Data Center provides confidence to all states that a nuclear explosion anywhere, anytime, will be detected. Furthermore, the CTBT delivers its scientific benefits to all state signatories. Since our National Data Centers for All initiative, or NDCs for All, you'll hear about it as Sanam said, was launched in June, we've received requests for technological and for capacity building support from 18 of the 43 states that have not been able to download data and use data this far. I'm really excited about this initiative of putting the power of the data into the hands of all. We are committed to seeing that the CTBT's benefits are delivered to all states, from the smallest to the largest. On the political side, we recently celebrated 6 ratifications in a 12-month period, far outpacing the recent rate of ratifications and steadily building momentum towards universalization. I got to tell you, breaking news, in WhatsApp this morning, I heard from a state that has completed their instrument of ratification and it's winging its way to New York. Right? That'll be 7. Isn't that amazing? As you know, I've deviated from my script. But I had to tell you the latest news because this is exciting. You're to see this moving forward. I will not be telling you who it is, but watch Twitter or Facebook and you will find out. But I want to commend all of those 6 countries that have taken up their responsibilities of strengthening the CTBT in this way. To those of you representing those countries and in the room, the Gambia, Tuvalu, Dominica, Timor-Leste, Equatorial Guinea, and Sao Tome and Principe, thank you. Thank you, and I'm delighted to see a number of those states represented here today. This achievement has truly been a team effort involving more than just our task force within the Secretariat. We've had presidents, prime ministers, foreign ministers, ambassadors, diplomats, technical people, and others, including the Interparliamentary Union, represented here by their president, all encouraging and supporting and celebrating with these recently ratifying states. And there, as I said, are more on the way. And so to each of you that have helped in that outreach, my deepest appreciation. However, our work is not yet done. But looking at the current global context as the backdrop for today's meeting, there may have never been a more important science diplomacy symposium than this one. When it comes to non-proliferation and disarmament, ominous dark clouds of concern are gathering. Ongoing conflicts conjure fears of the return of nuclear brinkmanship, and another nuclear test may be on the horizon. We need to do our part to further strengthen the international rules-based order, to complete the preparation of the verification system for the CTBT, to take every step possible to move towards entry into force, and ultimately, the universalization of our precious treaty. I welcome you all here this week to exchange ideas, to be inspired by one another, and to consider solutions of the challenges that we face. I believe that progress on the CTBT at this critical juncture can be further nurtured in the nexus between science and diplomacy. I hope you find this event to be a rich and a rewarding experience, and I look forward to following the discussions over the next few days. Thank you, and welcome to STS 3.
Thank you, Dr. Floyd, for those inspiring words and, of course, for highlighting the importance of Science Diplomacy Symposium. Next, I would like us to take a listen to a video message that was sent to us from His Excellency, Mr. Csaba Kurosi, the President of the UN General Assembly, who couldn't be here with us today. Now, Mr. Kurosi has spent his entire professional life in public service. He's an experienced environmentalist, and he held the post of Director of Environmental Sustainability in the office of the President of Hungary. He's also the founding member of the Hungarian Scientific Panel on Climate Change. Let's take a listen to his message together.
Excellencies, Executive Secretary Floyd, dear friends, the promise of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty is nothing short of transformational. A world free of any nuclear explosions. I commend the collective vision and hope of the ambitious scientists who brought the CTBT into life from an ideal to a near universal treaty. The CTBT has been crucial in establishing a global political norm for nuclear testing. This week's Science Diplomacy Symposium highlights that what we know to be true, that science and diplomacy can and must go hand in hand in order to make progress on the most difficult political issues of our days. Friends, while our efforts individually and collectively must remain focused on the treaty's entry into force, we must not forget that in the meantime, CTBTO is not simply waiting in the wings. It is active and it is ambitious. In addition to its state-of-the-art verification regime. The treaty provides for the sharing of essential data to address some of humanity's other existential threats: climate change, tsunamis, and violent volcanic eruptions. Put simply, the CTBT international monitoring system is saving lives. I add my voice to those calling for the treaty's universal ratification, especially among the Annex II states. To follow the lead of São Tomé and Príncipe, the sixth country to ratify the treaty just this year. This means universal ratification across Central Africa. We can make this a reality everywhere if we work together. If we trade apathy for action. The value of an idea is in the using of it, as Thomas Edison once said. With that in mind, I urge you all to build on your common interests to achieve the breakthroughs our world needs. You have my full support to bring us closer to a future free of nuclear testing. I thank you.
Grateful to His Excellency Mr. Koroshi for sending that timely message, for his support of the CTBT, and of course for saying that science and diplomacy must go hand in hand to make progress on some of the most difficult political challenges of our time. Now I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, Her Excellency Ms. Aruni Wijewardena, the Foreign Secretary of Sri Lanka. Foreign Secretary Wijewardena has held a number of positions at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs since 1988. And some of them have been in missions overseas, including this one here in Austria. Previously, she was the Director of International Organizations and the Non-Proliferation Program at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies in Monterey, so she has a great deal of experience under her belt. Please join me in welcoming Foreign Secretary Wijewardena to the stage for her remarks.
Excellencies, Executive Secretary Rob Floyd, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a great pleasure to be here today in familiar surroundings. I thank the Executive Secretary for the invitation to speak to you today. I recall that since the early negotiations of the CTBT in the Conference of Disarmament in Geneva, the interaction between scientists and diplomats was instrumental in laying the solid technical foundations of the treaty. 25 years later, at this symposium, we see that this partnership has evolved into a truly inclusive international network. In a deteriorating global and regional security context, with potential for nuclear escalation, Sri Lanka considers the universalization and the entry into force of the CTBT more urgent than ever before. Pending its eventual entry into force, the CTBT continues to prove its relevance in a dynamic, changing global context. For example, by creating a near universal, verifiable legal norm against nuclear testing broken only by one state, we have been able to limit nuclear test explosions to no more than half dozen in the 21st century. Prior to the CTBT, more than 2,000 tests were conducted in over 60 locations with catastrophic security, environmental, and humanitarian consequences. The near-complete international monitoring system, functioning 24/7, has successfully detected every nuclear test explosion that has taken place this century. It deters the development of more advanced nuclear weapons capable of reigniting a dangerous nuclear spiral. Participation in nuclear verification, which was long confined to a few technologically advanced states, has been made accessible to developing non-nuclear weapon states who have stood at the forefront of advocating for a ban on nuclear testing. No single country could have provided the CTBT's verification capability on its own. For example, scientists and experts in the distant Pallekele Auxiliary Seismic Station in Sri Lanka are connected to the International Data Center in Vienna in a round-the-clock continuous interaction. Our scientists have been trained for on-site inspection, and we have hosted integrated field exercises. The Executive Secretary's emphasis on human and technical capacity building and training activities, such as the NDCs for All, enhances meaningful participation and inclusivity. As in our experience in recent years with other fields, such as the pandemic, the state-of-the-art verification regime will benefit from a well-trained global scientific community of men and women. Pending entry into force, the CTBT enables equitable sharing of scientific data for extended civil and scientific purposes. I recall in early 2005, participating in my first session of the CTBT PrepCom as Sri Lanka's permanent representative, probably in this very room. And this was in the immediate aftermath of the Indian Ocean tsunami, in which over 30,000 Sri Lankans lost their lives. At that time, the benefit of using the CTBT's advanced database for early warning systems was indeed very tangible. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, given the rising global security tensions today, we need to ensure a safer world where the norm against testing becomes a binding legal obligation. We must enhance diplomatic efforts for universalization and entry into force of the CTBT to achieve its core objective of eliminating nuclear weapons testing. As Sri Lanka emerges from significant challenges domestically, we will accelerate our own efforts towards ratification of the CTBT, which, together with the NPT, we consider to be key pillars of the global non-proliferation, disarmament, peace, and security architecture. I thank you.
Thank you, Foreign Secretary, for your statement of support for the CTBT, especially at a time that we have all been saying and reiterating that we're facing global security challenges. Now, please allow me to introduce our last speaker for this segment, certainly not least, the Secretary General of the Interparliamentary Union, IPU, His Excellency Mr. Martin Chungong, who is a long-standing advocate of the CTBT, and he's actively engaged in raising the profile of the treaty whilst promoting its entry into force. In both regional and international IPU events, We're very grateful to His Excellency and his team for actually contributing to numerous ratifications of the treaty. The Excellency, the stage is yours.
If I could blush, I would blush because it was very outstanding. Thank you. Your Excellencies, my very good friend, Robert Floyd, Executive Secretary of the CTBT, ladies and gentlemen, indeed it gives me great pleasure to be here today to address this segment of the third symposium, the CTBT Science Diplomacy Symposium. And I bring the voice of parliaments to this deliberation. And I welcome the fact that finally we're all talking about bringing diplomacy, decision-making closer to scientific evidence. And I think that we can only come out stronger. That is why I want to salute the long-standing relationship that has existed between the Interparliamentary Union, the Global Organization of Parliaments, and the CTBTO. And I must say that since Robert assumed office, this relationship has moved on to a higher gear. Thank you very much for your support, Robert. As we look back over the past 25 years or so, we can be proud of what has been achieved in terms of support for the treaty. And this morning, we have had the spate of ratifications that have occurred just in a single year. I want to use this opportunity to congratulate the prime movers of this initiative, including the Executive Secretary of the CTBTO, on this great achievement. As we approach universality of the treaty, I'm glad that over the last 2 years, I've said, the IPU has contributed to some great successes by raising awareness in parliaments of all aspects of the treaty and motivating parliamentarians to champion its ratification. Because at the end of the day, ratification cannot take place without the consent of Parliament in many jurisdictions. This morning, we are addressing the issue of relevance of the treaty, and I think it's very evident to all of us, just judging from the speed of ratification that has occurred recently. So we think that it is important that the parliamentary community continue to proffer its support to the treaty. For too long, we have underestimated the threat of use of nuclear weapons, and the resurgence of this phenomenon, as has been mentioned by previous speakers on this podium, is a reminder that the CTBT is a first step towards a shared ideal of a nuclear weapons-free world. But the CTBT is not only about banning nuclear testing. I want to salute here its civil and scientific side benefits related to disaster prevention and mitigation, as well as climate change and environmental studies. This makes the CTBT extremely relevant in countering two of the existential threats currently faced by humanity, and makes it equally important and relevant to members of parliament who, as per their mandate, must protect the citizens they represent from these multifaceted challenges. Increasingly, parliamentarians are shifting from emotion-based to evidence-informed decisions. Scientific data, such as those provided by the CTBTO, are thus crucial for them to tackle security threats at national level through solutions that can make a life-saving difference. This is one of the main reasons parliamentarians are keen to champion the treaty. But parliamentarians are also eager to bring their country's foreign policy focus into line with issues that are high on the international agenda. As I mentioned earlier, the brutal reappearance of threats to use of nuclear weapons is surely a substantial motivation for them I mean parliamentarians, to continue to join the global effort in bringing an end to nuclear testing. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to conclude my remarks by stating again, loud and clear, that yes, the CTBT is relevant in the current tense situation and for all citizens and their representatives. It represents the promise of a more peaceful world in which people could envisage living free from fear. You can count on the Interparliamentary Union, the Global Organization of Parliaments, to continue mobilizing its membership, that is, parliaments across the world, to advance the treaty's universalization and entry into force. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Excellency, Mr. Chungong, once again, our gratitude to you for standing in full support of the CTBT and for your dedicated efforts. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, honored guests, this brings us to the end of this morning's opening session, and I'm sure you will all agree that our speakers have well and truly set the scene for further debate, not just throughout the day, but throughout the entire week. This takes us to the second part of the program, the high-level panel discussion, Advancing Universalization and Entry into Force of the CTBT. I'd now like to welcome our esteemed panelists to the stage. We have with us today the permanent representative of Costa Rica to the CTBTO, His Excellency Mr. Alejandro Solano Ortiz, the permanent representative of the Gambia to the United Nations, His Excellency Mr. Lamin Diba, the permanent representative of Italy to the CTBTO and Article 14 co-coordinator, His Excellency Mr. Alessandro Cortese, the permanent representative of South Africa to the CTBTO and Article 14 co-coordinator, His Excellency Mr. Rapulana Sidney Molikane, and permanent representative of the United States of America to the CTBTO, Her Excellency Ambassador Laura Holgate. Please come to the stage. It's quite heavy for me. The podium there for your vision, but it didn't work, I'm afraid. It's connected to wires. Now, this session consists of two different segments. We will have remarks initially from our high-level panelists. Then there will be a moderated discussion. I'll continue turning my neck to this way so I'm not neglecting our audience on this side. Now, over the next hour, what we're going to do is reflect on the collective success of the CTBT. In particular, the surge of support that we've had for the treaty during its 25th anniversary year, which we will keep reminding you of, 6 ratifications and counting. We'll also discuss what we can do, what the international community can do to ensure that we're building on this momentum and advancing the treaty's entry into force. Without further ado, please allow me to introduce our speakers one by one and then hear their introductory remarks. I'd like to start with His Excellency, Mr. Rapulane Sidley Monikane, who's currently the permanent representative of South Africa to the CTBTO. He has a long history of political activism in South Africa, and in the past he's held several high-ranking positions as well as the country's ambassador to my former home country, France and Monaco. He's also been the permanent delegate of South Africa to UNESCO. Now, as Article 14 conference co-president, Mr. Molikane, and we're grateful to him for that, has been crucial to encouraging outreach and the universalization of the treaty. Ambassador Molikane, the floor is yours.
Good morning, someone. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Executive Secretary Robert Floyd, distinguished co-panelists, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, South Africa is honored to participate in this high-level panel alongside our distinguished co-president, Alexandro, Ambassador of Costa Rica, United States, and Gambia. South Africa is the only country to voluntarily relinquish its nuclear weapon arsenal. We are committed to the total and complete eradication of nuclear weapons throughout the world. We remain seized with the question which our first democratically elected president, Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela, once asked, and I quote, "We must ask the question, which might sound naive to those who have elaborated sophisticated arguments to justify their refusal to eliminate these terrible and terrifying weapons of mass destruction. Why do we need them anyway?" Unquote. We are convinced that there are no safe hands for these deadly weapons, and therefore we are committed to international community's efforts towards their total eradication. To this end, we have signed and ratified, among others, the NPT, the Pelindaba Treaty, the CTBT, and the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. We are deeply disappointed with the lack of progress in the disarmament pillar, characterized by the failure of the 10th NPT Review Conference to reach consensus on the outcome document, as well as measures and timeliness for disarmament. We are further concerned by the continued accumulation of nuclear arsenals, their modernization, as well as their prominence in security doctrine of nuclear weapon states. The increasing threats of use of nuclear weapons in conflicts, as well as plans to conduct nuclear weapon tests, pose a grave danger to international peace and security and the very continued existence of humanity. South Africa, as a state signatory to the CBTO, is disappointed that after 25 years of the opening of signature, the treaty is yet to come into force. We continue to call on the 8 remaining Annexed 2 countries to sign and ratify the treaty without further delay. We are also committed to the universalization of the treaty. In this regard, our Honorable Minister for International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor, served as the co-presidents of Article 14 Conference for the period 2021 to 2023. In addition, South Africa has designated our Deputy Minister, Alvin Botha, as a member of the group of eminent members whose primary objective is to advocate for the entry of the treaty into force. South Africa, through bilateral engagement, also encouraged states that are yet to do so to sign and ratify the CTBT. We have thus noted with appreciation the recent signature and ratification as already been mentioned. With those few opening remarks, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador Molekano, for those remarks and those jarring words. There are no safe hands for these deadly weapons. Up next, we have the other co-chair of the Article 14 process, Ambassador Alessandro Cortese, who's long served Italy's diplomatic service and has held various positions, including the head of press and communication of Italy's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Prior to that, he was the representative of Italy to the Political and Security Committee at the EU in Brussels. And most recently, Ambassador Cortese was elected to sit as the president of the IAEA's 66th General Conference. Ambassador Cortese, you can take the floor.
Thank you very much, Sanam. Let me first say, dear Executive Secretary, dear colleagues, I'm happy I am to be delighted, I would say I am to be here with such an outstanding audience. And I'm particularly pleased to see the Foreign Secretary of Sri Lanka, a good friend. And by the way, Sri Lanka is one of the countries where as co-chair, we are following very closely. And also, of course, the president of the Interparliamentary Union, who is, I guess you are the successor of President Casini, of Italian. But I mentioned you because I didn't put it in my notes, but I think parliaments have a huge role in this, what we are doing. So I'm very happy, particularly happy to see you here also because I know the importance of your mandate, if you want. But of course, I'm really delighted to be here, to take the floor, to underscore the significance and importance of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. Even more so, I have to add, in a current international situation where, because of the Russian aggression to Europe, and would say Europe's and world security is at stake. As I regularly state in our meetings, the CTBT remains a cornerstone built upon the foundation of the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation architecture. The treaty's strong legitimacy and vital importance for our collective security is pointed out in, as you know, in a UN Security Council resolution, the 2310. And every year, we recall this treaty with the UN General Assembly resolution, which is, I would say, quite a reminder to all of us. Let me first stress again that CTBT is for Italy a strategic priority, as the Executive Secretary knows very well. I take this opportunity also to reiterate how important is for my country the treaty's verification regime, as well as our strong support for any initiative aimed at facilitating and speeding up its full implementation. And I'm also happy to say that huge big steps forward have been made in the meanwhile. Now, I said the number because I didn't tell it now, so somebody has to do it. 186 countries have already signed the CTBT. 176 have completed also the ratification process, and 6 during the current year only, thanks to the fantastic initiatives of Rob Floyd, clearly showing how widespread the sentiment of its relevance remains. I add that thanks to the CTBT, I remind also that thanks to the CTBT, a general moratorium on nuclear tests has been in place for a few years now, which is not a minor achievement, considering the number of explosions we have witnessed in the past. Nevertheless, only by attaining a globally recognized binding norm will the world be guarded from the high risk of nuclear tests and ultimately from nuclear proliferation. To reach this goal, we must redouble our persistent commitment to the entry into force of the treaty, which remains, of course, a very ambitious accomplishment. This is the reason why the treaty itself foresees at Article 14 the organization every 2 years of a ministerial conference held in New York during the ministerial segment of the General Assembly, which is co-chaired by 2 ratifying states. In such momentous occasion, foreign ministers discuss about the progress made and the initiatives, as well as the steps to be taken to accelerate the ratification process until the CTBT becomes binding and wholly applicable. Italy and South Africa are working together in this endeavor in these 2 years. Since September 2021 until September next year, we are coordinating our initiative together with the Provisional Technical Secretariat of the CTBTO in order to advance along this path, where every single step matters and every single country has a role to play. Italy and myself here today call on all partners to work closely together to create political momentum and turn into action and ultimately into reality the CTBTO. Thank you very much.
Grazie mille. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for those remarks at a time when you say, and we've been saying throughout the program, our collective security is indeed at risk. I'd now like to welcome the permanent representative of the US to the CTBTO, Ambassador Laura Holgate, who has extensive experience in arms control and diplomacy. She was the founding vice president of the Nuclear Threat Initiative, the NTI, and Her Excellency has greatly contributed to the promotion of the CTBT. And as a woman, I'm also proud to say that Ambassador Holgate plays an active role in championing women's representation in international security. Ambassador Holgate, thank you so much for being with us. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Is it on? There we go. I really appreciate the chance to be here. Thank you, Ms. Chantier, Executive Secretary Floyd, distinguished ambassadors and fellow panelists, guests. It's a real honor to be part of this esteemed panel and to have the opportunity to share the U.S. perspective with you. First and foremost, I want to applaud, as of those who've spoken before me, Executive Secretary Floyd's efforts to secure additional signatures and ratifications to the treaty. The 176 ratifications and 186 signatures is truly a milestone on the path to universalization. So thank you so much for your unstinting efforts and those of your staff, Rob. Strengthening arms control and nonproliferation norms and compliance with agreements and commitments is a priority of the United States. The Nuclear Posture Review, released in October, confirmed that the United States supports the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and is committed to working to achieve its entry into force. And we continue to strongly support the work of the Preparatory Commission and the dedicated professionals of the Provisional Technical Secretariat. We recognize the significant challenges that lie ahead in reaching this goal. Challenges that include securing ratifications from all the remaining Annex II states, some of which have not even signed the treaty. As Ambassador Bonnie Jenkins said at the CTBT Article 14 conference last year, this is no easy task. It is important to remember that no one country can make entry into force happen on its own. President Biden has long been a supporter of the CTBT, going back to his time in the US Senate, the body that serves to ratify all treaties that the US signs. Within the United States, we recognize that securing the advice and consent of the US Senate to ratification will require deliberate outreach and education to ensure that the benefits of an enforced CTBT are clearly understood by all. A crucial step towards nuclear disarmament is maintaining the international norm against nuclear explosive testing. And consistent with the goals of the CTBT, the United States continues to observe a zero-yield moratorium on nuclear explosive testing and calls on all states possessing nuclear weapons to declare or maintain such a moratorium. As we know, and as this conference highlights, science is at the heart of the CTBT regime and at the heart of the case for signature and ratification. the completion and provisional operation of the International Monitoring System and the International Data Center, and the development of the on-site inspection regime are critical to ensuring that the verification system will be capable of carrying out its compliance verification mission once the treaty enters into force. Our enduring commitment to multilateralism, international cooperation, and the rules-based international order includes our significant contributions of both funding and expertise to the vital work of the Preparatory Commission. As a state signatory to the CTBT, the United States provides the most financial support to the Commission of any member state through both assessed and voluntary contributions. 25 years ago, the IMS, the crown jewel of the verification regime, existed only on paper. Today, it is a nearly complete, technically advanced global network of sensors, including 35 stations in the United States, that can detect even relatively low-yield nuclear explosions in any environment in Earth. I would be remiss not to take the opportunity to highlight that a key priority of the United States with you here today is the sustainment of this vital network. Together, we must make sure that we have sufficient resource allocation for the maintenance, recapitalization, and sustainment of the IMS and the IDC, and the development and testing of on-site inspection capability. Without sufficient resources, we place at risk not only improved benefits for the future from these systems, but even the benefits we are receiving now. An in-force comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty is good for the security of all states and is a crucial step in reducing the risk of another nuclear arms race. I'll conclude with the words of Ambassador Jenkins further and recall that maintaining the status quo in which states have no treaty obligation to refrain from conducting explosive nuclear tests across all environments serves nobody's interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Holgate, for those powerful words. And yes, it may not be an easy task, but that's why we need your support, the support of the international community to work towards, advance the entry into force of the CTBT. Now, also joining us on this panel discussion, we have the permanent representative of the Gambia to the United Nations, His Excellency Mr. Lamin Diba, who will be providing the perspective of one of the countries that actually ratified the treaty during its 25th anniversary year. Now, as a former Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources, His Excellency has shown a powerful commitment to a better future, where climate action and sustainable development go hand in hand. He's also held various positions in non-governmental organizations working, and this is my favorite part, working for women and children. We're delighted to have him here with us. Ambassador Diba, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Executive Secretary, distinguished co-panelists, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure and honor to participate in this very important symposium aimed at provoking forward-looking thoughts to re-energize states to the laudable humanitarian cause which the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization represents. One that seeks to avert humanitarian disaster and preserve lives and livelihoods in the world that is free from environmental catastrophes. Ladies and gentlemen, I therefore take this opportunity to extend our profound gratitude, the profound gratitude of His Excellency President Adama Barrow of the Republic of the Gambia, to Dr. Robert Floyd, Executive Secretary of the Preparatory Commission for the CTBTO, and his predecessor, Dr. Lassino Zabo, as well as the entire staff, for your commitment and dedication that led to the attainment of an impressive figure of 176 ratifications. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, the Gambia and CTBO shared common values that are inalienable to the very existence of humankind. The world must recognize these values and make it count across all regions of the globe. To achieve the world that CTBTO is committed to preserve and bequeath to the next generation, yet unborn. This is very significant. All what we are trying to do is to save the world, but not for the present generation, but generations yet unborn. We all know nuclear, what it can do, the ability, the radioactive nature of nuclear. It can destroy generations even yet unborn. Therefore, we must recommit and reconcile our values on a trajectory that sees no artificial borders, but one world and one people deserving clean and clear fresh air from debris of disastrous human activities. Madam Chair, the ideal world we seek as humans does not and cannot exist without responsible human activities and participation. We must therefore act responsibly in our activities and participation to this world that we share as one human family, and we must be guided by the following 3 key policy values that we in the Gambia are highly committed and pride ourselves in promoting. And this is one of our motivations in ratifying this very important treaty. Madam Chair, the Gambia is very committed to the promotion and protection of human rights, peace and security, and the progressive development and implementation of international law, and which all states must commit themselves. Madam Moderator, these are the values that justified and call to action the Gambia's commitment to signing the CTBT treaty, as well as the subsequent leadership shown in our region as the first country to ratify the treaty in March this year. Madam Chair, we are pleased that our leadership serves as a courage for many other countries in our region to follow suit. For the reasons given above concerning the value-added benefits of the treaty to the world free from nuclear proliferation, showed that this treaty matters and shall continue to be relevant in our lives and the lives of generations yet unborn. The Gambia's commitment to the promotion of this most important treaty remains resolute. As a party to the NPT, CTBT, and the Pelindaba Treaty confirms our relentless commitment to international law, international peace and security, non-proliferation and disarmament, as well as promotion and protection of human rights, which are all interconnected to climate action and sustainable development. Madam Chair, nuclear tests have negative humanitarian and environmental consequences, and thus the international community must remain united against it. We encourage other states yet to ratify to consider doing the same as a way of keeping the only place we jointly and commonly call the world safe for all to enjoy. Madam Chair, our goal as one human family is to maintain universalization of the treaty, and as we work hard to achieve its entry into force, we must also celebrate that the treaty is already a success, as it has created a moratorium on nuclear tests since its opening for signature. Of course, I am not oblivious of the fact that what the moratorium secured thus far is not universal and requires our collective and steadfast commitment to bring all countries on board to the path of non-proliferation and non-testing. Madam Chair, as I conclude, it is with pleasure, pride and joy to share that Africa is a nuclear-free zone as confirmed by the Pelindaba Treaty, and therefore hold a high ground to urge all responsible states to commit to a world free from nuclear weapons. The CTBTO as a reliable partner in Africa, and we call on you to work with African states and all other regions to expand benefits of capacity building to African countries. And I must say, we welcome your support, the government of the United States supporting countries to look at Africa and join with CTBTO to build the capacity of African states to be able to reach the universalization of our common goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It was a great pleasure listening to you, and thank you for helping us, as you put it, work towards a world that's safer, not just for us, but for the future generations. Now, last but not least, certainly, we have His Excellency Mr. Alejandro Solano Ortiz, the permanent representative of Costa Rica to the CTBTO, a role that he's held since 2018. Now, before that, he was the country's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs after having served in various capacities, high-ranking capacities. Ambassador Solano Ortiz is also a proud international gender champion, something we discussed just before the program, and he has played a very active role in engaging on gender-related issues in the fields of STEM, especially with our youth group, the CYG, the CTBTO youth group. Ambassador Ortiz, you have the floor.
Thank you. It's off. It's working? Yeah. Thank you. Good morning. And it's a great pleasure for me as a member of GRULAC to be here, but also as a part of the Troika of Gender Champion, because I'm very pleased that another fellow colleagues of the Troika be part of this panel. Well, hopefully in the next panel, I would like to see more women here and less men, because we think that we need to be more representative.
We tried.
Distinguished Executive Secretary, distinguished Direct Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Sri Lanka, and distinguished Executive Secretary of the Interparliamentarian Union. It's a great pleasure for me to be here and to share some of the main message that I would like to share with you, why for Costa Rica this process is very important. And I would like to have this approach from our regional approach. The issue that Dominica has ratified this instrument just some months ago, it's a very important signal of the interest of our region to fully commit in this process of international nuclear arm control and disarmament framework. Latin America and the Caribbean is the second region fully in this process, so we are really proud to reach this goal. But certainly, our task is not completed yet. We, as a region, we would like to encourage the rest of the regions, especially those countries that are still in the process, to evaluate the ratification, and especially in the Annex II, to try to complete this process. I think it's a matter of principle, it's a matter of confidence among us as humankind to have a safe world. CTBT is fundamental to nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, because not only establish different goals already established in the constitutional document, but also, in our case, bring peace, security, and stability. CTBT also has an intrinsic complementarity relationship with the landmark Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT, the cornerstone of the global non-proliferation and disarmament regime, which recognize the crucial importance of ending nuclear test explosions, the Nuclear Weapons Free Zones Treaties, and last but not least, the TPNW, the latest instrument in banning nuclear arms. These all three instruments are complementarity, and we would like to highlight this issue. At national level, very briefly, I would like to make some background on the history that Costa Rica, as a non-army country since 1949, we proposed in 1948 to the Organization of American States a Latin American Nuclear Arms Control Agreement with the aim of preventing the manufacture of nuclear arms or the acquisition from the nuclear weapon states. But at that time, this action was unsuccessful. Years later, in 1961, the UN called for the creation of a nuclear weapons-free zone in Africa. And in 1962, Brazil proposed the extension of the respective resolution to the region of Latin America, considering, among other reasons, the concerns generated by the Cuban Missile Crisis. Afterwards, thanks to the efforts of Mexican diplomat Alfonso Garcia Robles as Mexican ambassador to Brazil, Latin American countries agreed to establish the first nuclear weapons-free zone through the Tlatelolco Treaty, which entered into force in 1969 and is the cornerstone of our political will as a region with an international non-disarmament architecture. Our region believes also in the peaceful use of the technology, and that's important also, this kind of symposium. Beyond the current purpose of detecting nuclear explosions, IMS data can provide wider benefits that can help save lives and expand scientific knowledge. For instance, I want to recall that the tsunami warning that different countries here have signed a different MOU with organizations. The Civil Aviation Safer is the most recently one, to contribute to the international response to the nuclear emergency or to better understand the natural world, wild behavior, climate change, or even the monsoon rains. So with these highlights issues, I would like to reiterate the full commitment of my country and certainly of our region to this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and for your commitment to the CTBT. Let's now kick off this moderated panel discussion. And actually, Ambassador Solano Ortiz, I'm going to start with you, if I may. You spoke about this I'm sorry, I'm about to lose my voice. Just moments ago, you are indeed the ambassador of Costa Rica, a country from the group of Latin America and Caribbean region. Now, with the signature and ratification of Dominica that you alluded to earlier, during the treaty's 25th anniversary year, your region, you mentioned this, it completed its adherence to the CTBT. Can you talk us through some of the major benefits of this for GRULAC?
Well, as I said, I think I would like to highlight three main points. The first one is our full political commitment as a region with this international non-arms control and disarmament framework. For us, the international nuclear arms control and disarmament framework need very strong pillars, and CTBT is one of them. So that's why we are full confidence of the capacity of this process to end to the successful, and the ratification in the last years, among them, one of the less Latin American countries have ratified this process, is a very crucial political signal of this full commitment of the international community. The second one is, as I said, CTBT is a fundamental part of this international architecture, and it's an instrument that complementarity with the NPT and the TPNW reinforce the international architecture, and that's the Latin American countries also are in favor of this process of ratification of CTBT. And the final is this fora has encouraged all the states is to reinforce this link between the scientific and the political commitment. So we have to understand that a lot of lessons we can learn from this different scientific application that we are identifying in CTBT. Probably this is one of the main attractive also for many states that with this kind of technology, a lot of peaceful applications can be implemented in our daily life. So a lot of life, especially the resilience of our community, can have very strong tools in order to save against climate change, against the better understanding of the nature. So we have a lot of applications that we have to understand fully through this kind of process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Of course, we are grateful to GRULAC for relentlessly advocating for the CTBT and continuing to mobilize efforts 26 years after it opened for signature. I'm now going to put on my moderator hat, which means I'm going to be a little bit bossy. We're running out of time, so if I can very kindly ask our panelists to ensure that their responses are kept to under 2 minutes, we'd be very grateful so we can get through and hear all your voices. I'd like to turn my attention to Ambassador Diba now. Of course, the Gambia, and we've said this several times throughout the program, is one of 3 African countries that ratified the treaty during its 25th anniversary year, alongside Sao Tome and Principe and Equatorial Guinea. And so it goes without saying that this is indeed a region that has shown great leadership when it comes to advocating for a world free from nuclear testing. Ambassador Diba, can you share your views as to why African states, which do face multiple other challenges, decided to act, and certainly decided to do this, and made it a matter of priority? I'm talking about, of course, the ratification of the CTBT during the past year.
Thank you. I think this is a very important matter to Africa. As I have highlighted in my statement, Africa is a region where we wanted to ensure that we promote global peace and security. And nuclear weapon and nuclear testing is a recipe for promoting conflicts around the globe. And as a result, our interest is not to build nuclear as an arsenal, but if we are to go by our commitments to the Paris Agreement that we are to reduce emissions from the world, nuclear is considered as one of the options that we are looking at. But this is where we are looking at in terms of building the capacity of African states to be able to use nuclear as energy instead of as an arsenal. And what motivates us to do this is to ensure that we live in a world free of nuclear. 2, we promote international rules and rule base, and we also promote peace and security within our region. We all know that Africa is one of those continents that suffer most when it comes to the impacts of climate and climate change, climate-related activities. So capacities building need to be directed in this area to see that we really support the efforts of CBT to ensure that we have enough information on climate and climate-related matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'd now like to turn our attention to a special mechanism that's used to promote the CTBT's entry into force, which, of course, talking about the Article 14 conference, which is currently co-chaired by our middle panelists, South Africa and Italy. And we're delighted to have you here. And I think it's particularly important, I'd like to put this question to you, Ambassador Molekane. Why did you decide to engage in this process, especially during this landmark anniversary that we have been marking at the PTS?
Thank you once again. Our co-presidency of Article 14 conference with Italy in this 25th anniversary year of the opening of the CTBT for signature has provided us an additional platform to contribute to the important task of advocacy for the entry into force of the treaty. In our tenure, together with Italy, state signatories adopted a strong political declaration, as you know, in New York. Myself and Alexandro, as representative of chairs of the Article 14, facilitated the adoption of a political declaration from here. So it is quite important for us. And we have been working very closely with the Executive Secretary to also mobilize in our own region, but also globally, to encourage states that have not as yet signed or ratified the treaty to do so at their earliest. So this has given us a added opportunity to play a very small role to ensure that we move towards making the world a safe place for all, because nuclear weapons testing are a disaster for all of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yet another reminder that why we're here is to work towards a safer world for humanity, for the international community. Now, Ambassador Alessandro Cortese, the other co-chair of the Article 14 process, we know that the Article 14 conference is not just a biennial conference. It's also associated with several other initiatives. Can you tell us about some of them, the steps that Italy has taken so that we can advance the CTBT's entry into force, and maybe give us some examples of the initiatives?
Yep, thank you. No, certainly. First of all, of course, the reason why Italy took the co-chairmanship of the Article 14 conference is because we are convinced that Article 14, which is the one who invites everybody to sign and ratify the treaty, is important, and we wanted to underscore that. So we need, and for that, of course, in this biennium we took some initiatives. I mentioned a couple. First of all, one initiative here was to work very closely with my friend Rapulane and with the Executive Secretary. So we had some meetings and we imagined together a few initiatives, and of course we always supported Rob in his outreach. One thing we do as Italy particularly, it might be interesting, is that we proposed as chair of the G7 group, we proposed a language in the ministerial statement and also in the summit statement on the CTBT ratification and Article 14, which I think is important because we promoted this thing in a multilateral, very, very important forum. We did some work also here with Rapulane and Rob, where I organized a lunch with non-Annex II countries, and maybe a little explanation. The CTBT can enter into force only with the ratification of all the Annex II countries. Of course, first of all, there are not so many the ones who did not sign, only 3. There are 5 more who have not ratified, but we are a bit far. So one part of the job is also to encourage this. But I did a lunch with the Article 14, with the non-Annex II, to remind the importance. And Italy, we have done some démarches, and I know that South Africa did the same in some countries, key countries, for encouraging it. So, yes, some example. But for instance, participation to this panel is another way to remind the importance of make the CTBT enter into force as soon as possible.
Thank you, Ambassador. Here we have it, an example of multilateralism. We have Italy and South Africa working together with the head of our organization, Dr. Robert Floyd, to really advance the treaty's entry into force. I'd like to turn our attention to the US now. Ambassador Holgate. The Nuclear Posture Review, NPR, recently released by the United States, reiterated the country's commitment, and I quote here, to achieve the CTBT's entry into force while recognizing, and this goes without saying, the challenges that lie ahead. Can you please elaborate on how and under which conditions this may actually happen?
Well, first I should say that the United States was among the first states to sign the CTBT, which I think is a point of pride for me and other American diplomats and officials. In our divided checks and balances government, however, that is not all that needs to happen. The United States Senate plays an essential role in providing advice and consent in support of ratification. And that will require deliberate outreach and education so that the benefits of an in-force CTBT are clearly understood by senators and staff who support them. We are not yet at that point in the United States political process, but the continued development of the verification regime, the provisional operation of the IMS, all of these really serve to highlight the value of the treaty and what it brings to the table, and all of the astonishing scientific and technical developments over the last 25 years. The US Senate failed to support this treaty at one point, and I think it's essential to point out all of the progress that have been made on verification, because that was the primary point of question at the time that ratification was originally put forward. And so the more progress we make on the efficiency and effectiveness and reliability of the verification system, the better the case we have to bring to the Senate. But as I mentioned earlier, the US is not the only country that is necessary for entry into force. There are some remaining Annex II states that have yet to even sign the treaty, and that's an additional challenge. So I think I would advocate and support and be grateful for the outreach that Rapulane and Alessandro have led in their leadership roles to so many other countries, and the work of the Executive Secretary and his team in getting not just the Annex I, but also the Annex II states fully on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. As Ambassador Laura Holgate just said, the US indeed signed the CTBT the very month that it opened for signature in September 1996. And of course, the country is the largest financial contributor to the CTBT and also a great political and technical partner of the organization, as are all the other countries that we have here on this panel with us. Now, I have one question that I would like to put to all of our panelists. I shall give you 30 to 50 seconds each to respond to that. So we're going to keep it very brief. So I'd like to bring your expertise in here. In the words of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, how can we, and I quote, redouble our efforts to think creatively and to act in the interests of the entire world's security and advance the CTBT's entry into force? Ambassador Diba, we'll start with you. You've got 30 seconds. You have the floor.
Thank you. I think this is the fact that CBT has convened this meeting is one area that we can start advocating. But not only us, the parliamentarians, the civil society, and other groups that need to advocate our national governments to be able to ratify and make entry into force of this important treaty.
On that BT note, we're moving on to Ambassador Holgate for your thoughts.
I would add to those points that are extremely valuable that were just made to say scientific progress. We need to expand and whatever. There we go. Do more as a community to bring the best scientific minds, to deepen the capacity and broaden its application across all of the countries who are part of this process.
Thank you. Ambassador Cortese.
Yes, no, I will be very brief. First of all, I support everything that's been said before, in the 60 seconds before me. But I want to develop something Laura said earlier on in her statement, the importance to enlarge the audience. That's why I mentioned parliaments is very important. Who ratifies the things? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, most of the countries, it's parliament. Secondly, public opinion, they don't know nothing about this. Youth, academia, because of the scientific. So I think this is a work we can do. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's probably not less. It's more difficult than the trying to have the signature of everyone. No, I'm exaggerating. but it's I think it's worthwhile to endorse. So if the Interparliamentary Union organizes in a meeting of all the parliamentarians all over the world to discuss the issue, that would be a great, I think, help. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ambassador Molikane.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I also agree with my co-panelists, but want to emphasize that young people, the youth, as a former youth activist, are the future, and therefore the role that CTBT is playing with its youth group program, that needs to be more intensified, and if we are able to spread it much more, especially in those countries that have yet to sign and ratify the treaty, we should exert more energy into that. And lastly, the CTBTO could explore synergies and complementarities with other treaties. For an example, in Africa, the Pelindaba Treaty worked together with us on that, and the TPNW, the other treaties that are located here in Vienna and elsewhere. So those are some of the examples that we can try to enforce and do together to ensure that we move towards universalization.
Thank you, Ambassador Molikane. Before we go to our last speaker, if I may, given that there was so much focus on the youth, I'd like to draw your attention and invite all our participants here, those that are joining us virtually, to come back to us at 1 p.m. We'll be back in this boardroom where we'll be having a CTBTO EU, turning my neck to the other side again, side event on promoting gender equality and empowerment of early career women in STEM. As part of this dialogue, we'll be hearing from two speakers, two young women, aspiring professionals who are actually part of the CTBTO youth group, the CYG, and they'll be joined by Ambassador Stefan Clement, who sat on the second row there, the EU ambassador, the head of delegation to the international organizations in Vienna, and our very own executive secretary, Dr. Robert Floyd. So do come back here at 1 p.m. for that very engaging, exciting event. Over to you, Ambassador.
Well, I will try to. I will try to highlight 7 concrete actions in 20 seconds.
Ooh la la, I was going to say.
1, international awareness through workshops, seminars with different stakeholders in order to promote the importance of the treaty. 2, to promote among the states the relevance of incorporating the political dialogue between the states, the importance of ratification of this instrument. 3, to full support of the process of Article 14 and the group of friends. 4, reinforce the role of further information of possible peaceful applications. 5, to include in our national political statements any reference to the importance of the disarmament of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, and CTBT should be part of this, one of the 3 pillars. 6, don't forget the important role played by the civil society, and especially the academy and the research sector. And 7, the issue of non-disarmament education, trying to promote with academia this issue. Of course, the work with the young people should be a key part of this process.
Wow.
19 seconds.
That deserves a round of applause. I've never had to put so much pressure on a panel, so thank you so much for working with me on that. And on that positive note, I'd just like us to take a quick moment to listen to a video message that was sent to us by one of the biggest champions and advocates of the CTBT, Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, the UN Undersecretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs. Again, this is someone who has continuously worked to call for the treaty's entry into force. Let's take a listen. 30 seconds.
Secretary of the Preparatory Committee. Dr. Robert Floyd, Executive Secretary of the Preparatory Commission for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to send this video message to the 3rd CTBT Science and Diplomacy Symposium. We are in the midst of an unprecedented technological revolution. A rapid convergence in science and technological innovations is changing almost every aspect of our daily lives, from communications to manufacturing to logistics. While such advancements have no doubt made our lives much more convenient and efficient, there are also potential risks. For example, technological innovations enable the design, development, and deployment of new types of weapons technologies with potentially unclear or dangerous applications. Rapid technological advances have led to growing concerns about the emergence of potential new forms of conflict, including in domains such as cyber and outer space. The increasing integration of autonomy into weapons systems and other military applications is but one development that could come with potentially grave implications for international peace and security, as well as international humanitarian and human rights law. As the international community, we should carefully examine the ramifications of these new developments to be able to mitigate and address their negative consequences. And we need to ensure that science and technologies are used only for the benefit of humankind in accordance with international law and the United Nations Charter. But we must remember that developments in science and technology can also be utilized in achieving a safer and more secure world. For example, to harness existing disarmament and arms control efforts. We have seen the potential for this in nuclear disarmament verification realm, where verification technologies, including satellite and aerial imagery analysis, are key to give confidence in the process of verification and, at the same time, protect proliferation-sensitive information. Ladies and gentlemen, the CTBTO has long been a leader when it comes to leveraging advanced technologies to promote disarmament and arms control. The International Monitoring System, or IMS, has expanded its network of highly advanced sensors to cover most of the Earth, monitoring for potential explosive nuclear tests. Those technologies are also used to give early warning for tsunamis and detect earthquakes. The IMS not only helps to build trust among states, but compliance with the treaty. It also facilitates technology transfers, social and economic development, and enables states to reach SDG targets. While the international community already benefits from these technical innovations, the CTBT's full potential will not be realized until it enters into force. Thanks to the tireless efforts of Dr. Floyd and his team, 6 new states have joined the treaty in this year alone, an incredible feat and one that brings the CTBT closer to universal membership. All states in Latin America and the Caribbean and Southeast Asia are now members. The 25th anniversary of the treaty's opening for signature was a catalyst that promoted various events and initiatives to promote the treaty, including the meeting of the Security Council in September 2021. The CTBT has been instrumental in upholding the norm against explosive nuclear testing, a norm that has been held by all but one country in this century. We must continue to reinforce this norm and prevent any further explosive nuclear tests. Current global conditions make our efforts in this respect as important as ever. I look forward to the interesting discussions at the symposium this week, which will bring together the scientific, technical, and policy-making communities. In this field, perhaps more than any other, it is important to look beyond our own silos and work with others to learn from each other. In harnessing the benefits of science and technology, we may find answers to problems that had hitherto been considered unsolvable. And I hope that this approach to the latest technological advances is replicated across the entire disarmament and non-proliferation spectrum. I thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks to UNSG Nakamitsu for those meaningful words, and I'm going to wrap up this component of the high-level session now. Our gratitude to our distinguished speakers, our panelists here. I'd love to run through the names once again, but I'm being told to wrap up here. Really appreciate your support during this time, at a time when we really need to strengthen and build upon all elements of the nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament architecture, and of course, as a first step, that is through the CTBT. Thank you. Before we break, please let's stay in this room, gather together so we can take a group photo to remember this incredible event. And afterwards, the Executive Secretary, Dr. Robert Floyd, will be hosting a reception just outside here, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I had to rush you so much.